All right, good morning. Good morning. We are editor extensions, custom models, and all of the good things at GitLab. So, today we are going to discuss model switching and potentially partnering up as a team to figure out how to make a go of this. So, before we get started, Eduardo,
Mhm.
second, let's kick off the goal. What's the goal?
Yeah. The goal is customers, due to compliance reasons, they need to be able to select a model that is not the GitLab default. So all of these models are GitLab provided. No, this is not about self-hosted. So a big company that has not vetted Cloud 3.7, they need to be able to switch back to 3.5 and still have dual working. That is our capability that we want to provide.
Okay. Now, in terms of the problem that we're solving, before we get into the proposed solution, let's go
Hmm.
through a couple of questions and feel free, team, to add questions, take questions away.
Hmm.
We're going to do this very similar in a similar fashion that we did Eclipse, meaning we had like a brainstorming session and that transformed into an epic that you guys can look at there. So,
Hmm.
first question is current workflow. Uh, we need to understand existing workflow and data models. That's pretty much
Yeah.
essential. So, what architectural components currently exist? And you can link diagrams or whatever you have there, but tell us a little bit about the current workflow.
So, Pat, do you want to explain this?
Yes, so we will be, so I will link two things, but I need to find them.
Do you
Uh,
want to link while I explain? I think that's better. So you link stuff and I explain. So there are three components happening. It's the AI gateway, the GitLab provided AI gateway, not self-hosted, so GitLab.com, the self-hosted instance, and the IDE where code completion or chat happens. So there are two
The
ways
last one? Say
where
the last one again.
the last one is the IDE plugins,
Got it.
where code completion happens.
Got
So
it.
there are two ways where code completion can happen. So you can either make a request that goes through GitLab. We have an option on GitLab to enable or disable that,
Okay.
or drops it, or it can go directly to AI Gateway from the IDE to save time in terms of latency. So instead of doing IDE GitLab AI Gateway, we do directly AI Gateway,
And
right?
we've got some diagrams to help us with this, right? If
Yes,
not, we need to
yes.
make them. Okay.
Yeah. So this is how it goes, and we can explain it. I can design the diagrams later, but so problem is this works now because we always assume that there's one model, like that there's no changing model. So what GitLab defines is the model. Now, if customers are defining the model, this needs to be stored on the GitLab database, right? Because AI Gateway doesn't have a database. So if a customer is using direct connection to the AI gateway, they have no way of going through the loop of IDE, AI gateway, and IDE, GitLab AI gateway to fetch what is the correct model to use. And this is what we need to, this is the problem that is happening. For customers that are using direct connection, they have no way of using model selection or model switching.
All right. So got that. So currently there's simply one model, no way to select another model, and we don't
Yeah.
persist this information anywhere, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, fine. All right.
Yes. The,
So
the, the information is saved on GitLab, but since it goes direct from the IDE to the AI gateway, it cannot fetch the information on this path.
got it. Got it. All right. So that's current workflow bits. I've got some questions on performance requirements, a couple of questions on failure and error handling, and some on extensibility. But instead of bogarting the entire meeting, what I'm going to do is pass the baton to Aaron. I'm sure he has some questions, and most likely Jean-Gabriel and Dylan also have some questions. Mohammed is going to be joining us. He's new, but he will be
Mm-hmm.
observing for probably a couple of weeks, but we want to make sure that he's also in the fold. So I'm going to turn this over to Aaron, but I do have some questions on performance requirements, failure and error handling, and extensibility, if those things
Mm-hmm.
matter. Aaron,
Mm-hmm.
pass the baton to you, okay?
Yeah, for sure. I'm just looking at this. So in terms of the IDE, when a direct connection to AI gateway happens, the first thing the IDE does is it sends a request to the monolith asking for the sort of like the details of how it should make the direct access. And that includes some request headers that it should be sending. So I'm thinking is a boring solution here just adding in a header that we've then forward along to the IDE for our initial implementation. And then we
Mm-hmm.
can think about like modifying the I guess the problem here is it actually allowing people to select in the IDE the different models, or is it rather just accepting whatever model has been set by their policy in compliance?
Yeah. I can answer that one. So what will happen is that each feature of Duo will be selectable to be linked to a specific model. So that's how it's gonna happen. So I think what since you said that, so I have actually a return question. How do we send those headers to the IDE? Do we need to send it to you like, okay, for this unit primitive, you will use that model. For this unit primitive, you will this that model, and so on and so forth for all the unit primitives? Or do you think there is like maybe a more efficient way that the IDE can communicate with the monolith and so on and so forth?
I think we can like for the first iteration we could probably go with the boring solution of like if the monolith sends a specific header, like we can
Mhm.
put a new header in, which gives it like it could be a hash of details, a JSON hash. It could be base 64 encoded, so it doesn't we don't have to worry about transporting it.
Okay.
Um, and actually, because it's in the response body, we may not even need to encode it.
Also,
Yeah.
Okay.
Pat, do you prefer Pat or Patrick?
Oh, whatever. It's whatever.
All right.
Trying to
Also in the
go that
potential
email.
solutions section, there's a potential solution section.
Yeah.
While you are talking, please add those things in as well. So
Okay.
you ask the question about Aaron said, "Hey, why don't we just send this stuff in the header
Yeah.
with the request?" So make sure that you're actually responding here as well so that we can keep that
Okay.
information, okay?
Okay, no problem.
Sorry about
So I
that.
don't know if I answered your question. So the scope is per namespace for now. Per unit primitive, you can change the model.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yes,
let me
guys.
go
For
back in
yeah,
here.
for unit primitive. And do we have a list of the unit primitive somewhere so we can put it in the
Yeah,
document?
we do. We will provide this.
Okay.
But I think direct connection only happens for
Suggestions today?
code generations and code suggestions, right? So those are the two places where direct connection happens because
Yeah.
the chat goes the full loop always, right? That's the case. Okay. So that helps a lot because um so let me go back to it. So general nods from crowd. So which helps because we don't need to fetch all of the data. We can just fetch the two configurations, right? And these configurations could be fetched when fetching info on whether to use direct connection or not. So we could piggyback. So on error handling, I'll add on the question of error handling. But you don't need to, this does need to be a UI thing on the IDE. This doesn't need to be an UI thing in the IDE. It just
Why does it not need to
needs
be?
to be fetched from GitLab. This configuration is on GitLab.
Got
So
it.
you just need to fetch the values, but not to change the UI in any way. I mean, eventually, if we want to display this to the customer as they need, future, but
Yeah.
there's no requisite for doing that. Um, so we, um,
I guess the main concern here is like what happens if it gets updated while the ID is open. Because like if we get the initial configuration, then it changes. Like we're
yeah,
going to request, we could request the non-vetted model, which like it's a massive edge case, but it could happen.
no, that's edge case is important because, especially because of compliance, we don't want customers sending data to a model they don't know. Then I will return the question, what happens if the customer changes the option of direct connection with when someone has the ID open?
I'm going to pass that to Aaron. I think he.
Can some kind of like WebSocket connection like be established between the changes and
That well,
it's
do we
complicated.
have any mechanism right now, Aaron, on
For chat, yes, we have a WebSocket connection established, so we'd be able to push down a notification for chat, telling the IDE how to behave. Right now, it doesn't do that when it does a response. Right now, that's so that it's the AI completion response subscription in GraphQL. So
uh-huh.
we have a like a using action cable. We have a layer there of messages back and forth. So we could potentially send new information through. We'd have to make sure that doesn't break existing clients, but there are some fields that we could probably play with, and existing clients may ignore them if it's unknown. Um, Now that said, for code suggestions, with if AI Gateway had any sort of notification, AI Gateway wouldn't know that a change had happened on the monolith, I
No.
suppose. So then that connection that we have when we're streaming isn't really useful either. So we would have to essentially have polling or something in place where
But how does so we only fetch whether to use direct connection at the startup of the ID?
Yeah.
at the beginning,
Always.
yeah, at the beginning of the language server, we can restore the language server, and we could potentially have something where we like catch a specific signal or response from GitLab and saying, hey, you need to restart the configuration, like reload your configuration essentially. But today we don't have anything related to that.
Okay.
It checks the direct connection details as it starts up, and then after that it continues going to through the monolith. And so if there's any response errors in the case of that direct connection request, code suggestions continues to use the monolith. And so
Mm,
that's the behavior. And that doesn't change until they restart the language server, which some of our IDEs give a button to restart the language server, and other IDEs you'd have to stop the extension and restart the extension.
Mm-hmm.
okay.
And the ID, how does the IDE authenticate or authorize with AI Gateway?
Yeah. So there's two.
Directly.
Yeah. So for direct connections, the response of there's a direct access API request. If you want the IDE for I'll start from the beginning. So when the ID starts, you either have OAuth or personal access token. And so obviously you've gone through and accepted an OAuth application, or you've set up a personal access system with API credentials with API scope on it. Once that happens, the next request then is we start looking for feature flags to see whether Duo features are enabled or not. If they are, we then make a direct access request to see whether code suggestions should use direct connections to a gateway
Mm-hmm.
or whether it should use the monolith. Then the direct connections still go through the cloud connector, so cloud.gitlab.com now. Um, Old versions of the IDE still could connect to other like other endpoints potentially. But let's think forward facing. We're going to be thinking everybody's on cloud.gitlab.com. in 6 months' time, that the majority of folks will be on that anyways. So
What if,
at the go ahead.
oh, sorry, sorry, you still were talking.
Yeah, so that that request to the monolith for direct access includes a response, which includes details of headers to add in and the token that's there, and also the expiry of the token.
What
So
if we revoked somehow those authentications when uh, we or we somehow added a response header or revoked the token when this configuration changed, either direct access configuration or the model configuration.
so we use JWTs and we do signing, I believe. So we could possibly do that depending on the key. I don't know how many keys we have for AI Gateway though. I'm not sure if we have it like a namespace basis.
Okay.
So your suggestion would be to just revoke like add the model as a payload in the GWT and then revoke it when we change the settings and then
Yes.
add
Somehow
very
like
much
this.
over authenticate again and then we'd carry
Yes,
the payload to the
either piggyback on the request for re-authentication itself, so you need to re-authenticate, um, but or just in a signal to fetch the models. But I think we are getting a little bit into the technical details of the implementation on this, rather than on the need of the feature, and then we can discuss the implementation details. But the need is correct. We need not to have a model sent, like a request sent,
Mhm.
when a configuration has changed. That is the need. That is the request
Okay.
of the sub request of the issue that we're
Yeah,
discussing.
and knowing that we send a lot of requests, so the change need to be like this. The fact that you mentioned authentication is interesting because we need to block the requests that are not made with the correct model
Yes.
because like
Yes.
these requests would be sent pretty like there could be a race condition. So if we want to avoid that, I
Yeah.
think yeah. Anyways, yeah,
So we need
we're
to.
getting the implementation, but yeah, makes sense.
It's the engineering mind. We always jump to the implementation.
Yeah.
And with that said, there are bits, Aaron, that you are bringing up about flow. And one exercise that I want Mohammed and Dylan to do is to listen to this again and transform just the authentication bit that they mentioned into a diagram. And if you want me to help you, I will. But let's start getting some of these bits diagrammed so that we can all be on the same page on how things work. Does that make sense? Okay.
So I think
I
our
have
need. Sorry.
I'm just out of curiosity, we talked about the need, but I see when I look at the issue that's in the document, it says iteration one. Has there been other iteration discussed? So that like maybe things that we need to take into account that we should take into account now instead of being blindsided later, or is it only
We
I don't,
share model
I don't,
switching.
I
Where's the
don't
model
think,
switching?
I don't think it changes much for
okay?
Yeah.
when we have the connection between the monolith and the IDE in place. I don't think it will change much for you because
Okay.
IDE don't need to be aware of the context on which those
Mhm.
decisions are
Yeah.
made. So, Eduardo, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Okay, so I'll put this under extensibility because this seems like an extensibility question.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
shared the blueprint, well, the MR for the blueprint, because finding on the handbook, I'll find it later. The final iteration, like way ahead, talks about defining at the IDE level. Like you are
This
on the
is our
IDE,
North
you are used.
Star.
Yes,
Eduardo, this is our North Star? Okay.
yes. This is a North Star way ahead of time. Um, we don't even have support for this on the back end, so I didn't bring to the discussion because I don't think it should be too much
Mhm.
part of the decision making.
That's okay. So what's the
The,
North Star?
it
Define it.
Wait, the North Star?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so the North Star is what I said in the beginning. Customers should be able to select between the model, GitLab provided mo between the multiple GitLab provided models for specific features. This is North Star. This is the capability we want to provide. And then there are variations of this capability at the ID level, at the GitLab level, which is what we're implementing now. It could be at the user level, but we haven't received yet um, requests for this. Like,
Okay.
for example, Copilot allows for you to change at ID or Windsurf or whatnot. They allow you to change at ID level. We haven't received a request for that yet. So as long as a customer
That's
can
table stakes.
change,
That's table stakes,
yes,
right? So it doesn't
yeah,
matter that our clients aren't requesting it. The point is that it's table stakes because our competitors are already there.
yeah, maybe at a later iteration, we can think of it.
Okay.
Of adding at the ID. At that moment, we'll need UI changes to the
Give me a
ID.
second,
We'll need to
guys. Keep
configure.
going. My alarm is ringing, so keep.
So at that moment, we'll probably work on UI, but that's not,
Okay.
well, that's a bit far from where we are now. We still have to
Good.
deliver the capability.
Good.
Okay. So what is
Mm,
our first step? What is our first step? So the North Star is customers should be able to select between multiple models at the IDE level. What is the first step? What is now? So now next North Star, what's now? What do we want to build right now? What's the first step?
right now is we need the direct access of AI Gateway to respect a GitLab defined model selection, selected model. That is the definition, I think, of what we're trying to achieve here.
And that's for code suggestions and for chat.
Generation, yes. For chat, if chat goes through the direct, well, let's put yes. It is for everything. Everything has to accept that the the model defined by the customer. However, if dual chat always goes through the ID through the GitLab and never through direct connection, it will always pick up the right model to call AI gateway. But let's have this as a second. Let's say yes, both for all features on the ID. They need when making a direct access to AI gateway, it needs to respect the selected model by at the namespace level for the customer.
I'm writing, go ahead.
That's it. I'm done.
That's
And
my question is from like a user perspective, how does a user confirm what model the request is being sent to? Are they just relying on the config in GitLab, or is there a way to confirm it on the IDE side?
That's what I mentioned in the beginning. Like right now, there's no need for the customer to like the user to confirm. They can confirm on the AI gateway side because it will receive the model params as properties over there. So they can log. They'll have this logged. The customer, the user of the IDE, they have no way of knowing which model. We can build this eventually, but that's not a requirement of. I would wait for customers to want to actually ask for that.
Why?
Okay. As like a
I gotta just why? Why would we want to wait if we've got a team that can build it and we know that they're gonna want it? Is there a
We
specific?
don't.
I'm
I
I'm
don't know if they want to want it. If they're gonna want it,
Isn't it table stakes for don't our competitors have it?
they add it, but I'm not sure if in the context of GitLab, the customers that want this compliance, I don't know if they actually want users to be able to select models or just follow the models that were selected at the organization level, right?
Got it. Okay, so let's say one thing that we want to do is make sure that we're also building things that have flexibility up front.
Hmm.
So let's say, just for all intents and purposes, that our clients eventually want both.
Yeah.
What kind of architecture should we be thinking about now to make sure that that's possible? So, yes, we want to build something now, but why won't we build the underlying architecture to do both of those things? Why would we
Mhm.
not do that now? Why wait?
The additional steps that would be needed for us to deliver the second part is now that the IDE would have to know about all of the possible models. Oh, sorry, Patrick, I
No,
stopped.
I raised my hand to talk after you
Okay.
to add up to what you were gonna
Okay.
say.
So the IDE will need all of the models, the model configurations, to be able to display to the user what are the models that are available for this. So it's more complicated. There are more steps. There are more. I don't like. Let me put it this way: building the current stage is the first, like the idea of not user selecting at the user at the IDE level is the first step towards building that at the user level. So you have to build the fetching from GitLab a models to be able to then build a user selective at selection at the ID level. So one is a prerequisite for the other, I would say.
Okay. So, ability to send a request for a different model, and the AI gateway must respect that request. So, that's back-end bits that we can build on top of,
Mhm.
meaning once that's
Yeah.
unlocked, as we iterate, we can create something on the front end from an IDE
Hmm.
standpoint that allows that tailoring at the
Yeah.
organization level or at the user level. Am I hearing you?
Yes, exactly. Current we have at the namespace level, and then this would be the namespace level is on the GitLab UI, and then later on the user level, if they choose to do so, to test out something or whatnot.
Yeah, but
Right?
how it's envisioned now in the blueprint, it's gonna be a trickle down effect, and that's why we operate with iteration right now. So it's gonna be first the top level groups. They will be able to select models that their subgroup will be able to choose as their model for whatever feature. And then the projects, the user under that group will be able to choose whatever model that their top their parents have chosen for them. So it's gonna be a trickle down effect. And this is the first building block, and this is what we need to deliver in this milestone. So
Gotcha.
top level organizations, yeah.
Okay, so we got a couple more questions. Performance. What are the performance requirements? Um, I'd like us to define that. I want us to not say, okay, latency is latency. What are our performance requirements for this? And also, I want us to talk a little bit about failure and error handling. I don't want us building things that quietly fail.
Yeah.
So, what are the performance requirements? Specifically, what is like the maximum acceptable latency? And the failure and error handling, I've got a question for that, but let's talk a little bit about performance so that we can see if this is possible.
So on request, AI gateway completion requests is our like latency is one of the most important things on completion requests, and we don't want to affect latency. So let's put it this way: there's no increase in latency for completion requests.
Got
Does
it.
that
What is it now, right? So it's okay to have, let's be specific. I want a number. So what is
what
our,
is the number now?
yes, what is our number now so that we know
Yeah.
right? So we need to know what that number is.
So we
That
also need to know because that I'll ask our code completion team
gotcha.
uh, because I don't have the number.
Okay.
Um, in terms of payload, we should only send additionally the provider
Mhm.
and the GitLab model ID along with the payload of the completion request. The completion team already implemented on AI Gateway handling that. We
Mhm.
just need to add to the payload, and then it will pick up over there. Um,
Okay, my last question is about failure and error handling. How
mhm.
we handle that? How should the IDE handle scenarios where model preferences for whatever reason we can't grab it? We don't want things failing. What's the fallback behavior for that?
So the worst thing that can happen that I can think of is the administrator of the namespace has set a model, and like we were talking, what Lexion mentioned, and then the IDE tries to make a request with some PII to a different model. That is not supposed to happen. Like that cannot happen. We need to block that from happening before. So the error handling, um, when we start the language server, we need to receive something from GitLab, right? For it to know that it's working. That's how Aaron or someone might correct me because we need to know even if it's direct access or not, right? So we always have to receive something. What happens when it doesn't? This is a question. What happens when, well, I start a language server and then we send, like, we try to fetch whether direct answer is possible or not, and it fails. What happens then?
Right now, it fails over to using the monolith for all code suggestions requests.
So then it always goes to code suggestions request if it fails to connect. So that's a good behavior on our side, because then it will always go through
Monolith.
that path, through the monolith, and it will always fetch the correct configuration if that's the case.
Let's think beyond configuration though. Let's think about our model partners. Sometimes the failure is on their end. And let's say that I'm requesting something that frankly isn't working. What is our fallback? What do we do when someone's in one model requesting another model and that model's not working? I know these are basic questions, but these are the questions we've got to actually ask so that we can make sure that we've got some error handling and some fallback. So, what happens? Do we default to our main model? What do we do when the other model that was selected isn't working and it's not something that we can control?
If if a non-default model is selected and it's failing, we fail. We don't switch to a fallback.
Okay.
Should we have an allow list of models instead of picking a specific model?
That's a different uh that's potentially different iteration that we're talking about when there are a list of possible models that the AI gateway can choose from.
But
Um,
that's more of a North Star or next. So now is back in ability to request.
yeah,
Next, do you feel like allow list, North Star, allow list
yes,
ID? Okay, cool. I'm gonna put that there.
yeah. It could be eventually we could have multiple models that the customer can select for one a main model as and like just a list that the priority the order of the list defines priority, and then it goes through the list on AI gateway. That is very similar solution. It's just changing the payload that we fetch and that we send to the AI gateway. So it's a simple, in theory, a simple addition to the solution that we're building right now. Um, but then
Well,
if AI gateway fails with that request, we fail. We fail. We don't try to test another model. Don't try to switch.
if AI gateway felt like we said that falling back on the monolith is good, but I'm not sure it is because I feel like that's increased latency if the model switch.
Right, that
Although although it shouldn't happen, like that often. It's still something we have to think about. Maybe instead the AI gateway should just respond with something that indicates that uh, that we should try to get a new token or try to re-authenticate instead of rerouting to the monolith.
Uh, that fallback that Aaron mentioned, I think it's only on the at the startup, right?
Yeah, so that's when we do the initial request. So whenever you change your
Okay.
credentials, it'll do a request.
Okay.
So that's basically a startup, but it also whenever you change your credentials. Um, uh, and that may take effect when we refresh the auth credentials. I'd have to double check that. Um, but yeah, like so right, that's the behavior in all existing extensions, which brings up another point. All existing extensions will not be sending the correct information right now. I think right now, I think we may be sending in model name and model provider for code suggestions. And that's based on the fact that we have the direct connection, like the direct access request. Direct access sends back a head field for model details. We then read that in the language server and then add that in. Though I think there's like a slight bug in that code because instead of sending it with the same param name, we're sending it to directly in the request. I have to double check the AI gateway. I was pulling up the code there, but we essentially send model the request parameters for our code sessions request are model name and model provider. But it seems like other places expect it to be model underscore details. So I'm not sure what the current AI gateway expects. Um, but Anyways, because of this, though, because existing requests may be sending the wrong information, or maybe they're sending the right information, that'd be great. We can go and look at the numbers for how many clients are on a version that is sending those like model name, model provider fields. But we need to figure out what we want to do in the case that those, if the information is not sent in the code suggestions request, what should we do on the monolith side? And what should we do from AI gateway? Because we have options in AI gateway, you can fail the request as well as failing the request in the monolith potentially. So people who want this compliance thing will have to update their instance to a later version. If they're self-managed, they'll have to update to a specific version as well. So if you're on 18.1, we can have enforcement in. And so one of the things that I'm working on in 18.1 related to security, just backwards compatibility issues in general, is having the ability to block access. Hey guy, no videos with the school uniform. Take your uniform off. So so what we have now is right now, if you make a request from any version that's ever been created in the language server, it'll make a request. There's bugs in some versions. In some versions, we have different issues that we are concerned about. But we technically like have all these versions that can make requests to any version of the monolith, whether it's self-managed or
Mhm.
self. And so one of an epic that I'm working on currently is allowing administrators in like for GitLab instances to enforce a minimum version of the language server. And so one of the problems that we have with this is that for compliance we need the model details, and if the extension is not sending it, then we just like fail hard. But what we could do is we could use that same sort of logic that I'm building into the functionality where an administrator sets the minimum version and we know that their version should have those headers. And in which case, we know that we can also add a new response status, which the editors will be updated to handle accordingly.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, if it's solution that is used for different stuff, that's even better. And this will also allow direct, this whole thing will also allow direct access on dual self-hosted,
Okay.
which is not something that is not possible right now, right? Because we have also to go through GitLab to fetch the thing. So once this implemented for model selection, by as a free gift, we get direct access go working on dual self-hosted, which is a very desirable thing.
All right, I know we're running short on time, but what are our next steps? It looks like we're trying to get this thing going back in first wise. So what are our next steps? What's the next steps?
It depends now. What we need is a timeline from you. So what we need is like, did we give all the information that you need from you? Well, if we didn't, just reach out. We can add additional.
Well,
This is a table. Sorry.
it sounds like what you need right now is the ability to send a request for a different model
Yeah.
to the AI gateway and it be respected. So that sounds like
Yeah.
that's the bare bones that you need. right?
Yeah,
Aaron,
Uh,
exactly.
chime in on what you
Yeah,
think this will entail.
for Duo chats, do we already have the mutations accepting model names for the Duo chat mutations? And I think it's the AI action mutation specifically we're using for chat.
Uh, the AI actions on GitLab will fetch the model from the database. So there's no
Yeah, so chat doesn't. Okay, so chat won't need it
chat
then.
doesn't it. It's the completion. It's only direct connection. It's only calls to AI gateway that need to be added. Calls to GitLab are not needed. Only calls to AI gateway.
Okay.
Okay. So then what we need is a timeline. We are 18.0. We are delivering 18.1. We are delivering this for as far as we can. And if direct connection is not working, we will need to use a mitigation where for customers that have this set up, we will disable direct connection,
Yeah.
right? For customer that do have this, if this is opt-in, so we will have to implement this on the back end that when this, so we could have a mitigation in place, but ideally 18.1, 18.2 is where we would, at worst at 18.2, I would believe, for a table stake item like this is where we will want to deliver this.
Okay, well, we're definitely here to help and we're ready to get going. Aaron, take a couple days to figure out what you think this is going to entail. And Jean-Gabriel, Mohammed, and Dylan will start working on figuring out not just the now part, but maybe
Yeah.
potentially some of the next and North Star bits. But yes, we're going to get working on this immediately. Please provide the graphs that I asked for and any details to the team that you can. And obviously, everyone's going to be in contact with you, Eduardo, as this moves forward. Okay?
Just
don't hesitate to ping me on the issues if you have any questions.
Of course, Patrick. You will definitely be working closely with Aaron. You don't need to go through me at all. You can go work directly and connect with Aaron and Jean-Gabriel and Mohammed and Dylan. But we do need to flesh out probably a better, a more informed issue or epic. And I'll work with Aaron and yourself on making sure that that happens. But I think we've got the details that we need. Aaron, Jean-Gabriel, what do you guys think?
uh, yeah, I have a question. Is there a feature specific channel or whatever that we should join to be able to follow any updates?
Uh, there is
Uh,
there is an epic. I will link it in the document.
All right.
And just so
yeah.
that you know, we do have a habit of making our own little mini epics. So don't take it personal if you see Jean Gabriel make a mini epic or if Aaron makes a mini epic and attaches
Yep.
it to yours. It's just our process.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
please send us something so that we can connect it to it and they can get started with authoring, okay?
no
You
problem.
can use the issue that I shared with y'all.
Mhm.
You can take it over, assign to your own group and whatnot, and promote it to an epic if you need it.
No
Um,
worries, no worries.
okay.
Anything else we need to know? But we'll get back, we'll get working on this and get assignments done
Okay.
this week.
Yep. Maverick, I added an item on this on the general updates, like for AI thing,
Yeah.
like that wiki page. So it's under my name, but if you want to switch to your name, the ownership of this.
We'll put both of our names on it so that
All right.
it's both of us. Doesn't have to be either
Okay.
or. We're a team. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. All
Have
right.
a good
Thank you,
one, everyone.
everyone.
Bye bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.